Hello everyone. Today I would like to bring you an Elemental Shaman guide for patch 7.3. I've been thinking about doing a guide for a little while now, but I never got around to it. But now I'm getting around to at least recording it. So, to start off with, I'm going to go through the talents. I'm going to go through some personal recommendations I have for what you should do on certain boss fights in Tomb of Sargeras. This guide is for a rating setting, by the way, for Heroic and Mythic. So, to start out with some basic talents, and just so you know, these are optimal with the Gamble build, or the Casino build, which is the Gloves legendary that procs Ascendance, and the Boots legendary that procs Earthshock. If you do not have these two legendaries, I recommend, at least in the talent situation, for single target, all you do is switch Aftershock to Ancestral Swiftness. Aside from that, all the talents should remain the same. But if you are running either spec for single target, you should be running Totem Mastery. It's simply the best. You get more overloads on your Lightning Bolt. Your Flame Shock does more damage, which synergizes really well with your Tomb of Sargeras 4-piece. You generate Maelstrom over time, and you get some extra haste. And at least with the Gamble build, haste is your best stat. So it's even better if you're running the Gamble build. Earthen Rage, I cannot lie, I have not tested this, but I have also never seen anyone play with this. So I don't even bother, and also it sims horribly for me. Path of Flame is a talent that I would like to take, because Path of Flame mixed with Ascendance, you do a lot of Lava Burst damage, and you spread Flame Shocks, which could make it easier on your Maelstrom consumption, and kind of synergize with your tier 20. But in the end, it's still not as good, because then you lose out on your higher overloads for Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, lose out on Flame Shock damage, haste, and Maelstrom over time. For the tier 30 talent choices, Gust of Wind is basically your go-to. Gust of Wind allows you to use jump ahead, like maybe 15-20 yards. It's on a very short cooldown, it's instant, doesn't cost anything. It will interrupt your casting, which sucks, but you just kind of have to deal with it. Elemental Shamans are not very mobile, while also being able to do damage, unless you're getting really lucky Lava Burst procs, or Earthshock procs. Ancestral Guidance, I have never seen this used either, because it's such a weak cooldown compared to other cooldowns other people could be choosing as a defensive. So I have never seen anyone run this, and I would definitely not run this. Possibly, depending on your composition, you may want to run Windrush Totem. Because I remember, this is back when I played Enhance in Emerald Nightmare, but this still applies, on Ellerith. Renferal, was it? We had one Druid, and that was our only Stampeding Roar-like ability. So I had to spec into Windrush Totem so that we could have a second raid-wide speed boost for... I'm pretty sure it was when the boss would jump up and then jump back down and smash the platform, but aside the point. If your raid needs more raid-wide mobility cooldowns, Windrush could be a good one, but Gust of Wind is definitely your go-to. Lightning Surge Totem. I mean, honestly, this bracket, it doesn't matter a whole lot. Lightning Surge Totem, I would say, is your go-to, especially for maybe Mistress, because then you can stun all the ads in one place and then just spam Earthquakes on the ads, and that will give you a lot of damage to throw out there. Earth Grab, it can sometimes be useful maybe on I don't know, Harjatan, because the ads move around so much. I wouldn't say it would be good on Mistress because the ads aren't only moving, they're teleporting. So, I mean, those teleport out of your route and it won't even matter. But Earth Grab might be able to stop the Fixate ads, or the Sickly Tadpoles, or any Tadpole really, on a Mythic difficulty for Harjatan. I have never seen Voodoo Totem used. I have never even used my Hex ability, just because I have no use for it in a raid setting. I just don't. So I'd recommend either Lightning Surge or Earth Grab, depending on your situation. The level 60 tier, like I said, if you are running the Gloves and Boots legendary spec, that's called the Gamble build. It's a spec basically based off of pure RNG, but it's still a lot better than all of the other specs in the way of single target. And just to remind you, this is a single target talent build. We're not doing AoE right now. So if you're running these two legendaries, you have to run Aftershock, which refunds 30% of the Maelstrom that you spend. No matter how you spend it, it's refunding it. And so yeah, if you're running these two legendaries, you have to run Aftershock. If you are not running these two legendaries, you should be running Ancestral Swiftness, because the flat 6% haste is just, in general, useful. Sorry about my dog. He's annoying. And I have honestly never seen Elemental Mastery used before. I feel like it could be good if you need really high burst damage and then the rest of your damage doesn't really matter. So maybe for a boss that, like, I don't know, maybe for a boss like Lura, for example, where Lura doesn't take damage because it's an ad phase and you have to kill the ads, and then she takes extra damage. Maybe that's a time where it could be useful, but in Tomb of Sargeras, Elemental Mastery is... we don't have boss fights like that. We don't have boss fights like Scorpyron where there's 15 seconds of taking a lot of extra damage. So I would not take this. It's either Aftershock with the Gamble build or Ancestral Swiftness NDR time. Tier 75. The only talent I run in here is Elemental Blast, but I have also seen Elemental Shamans on my server that are better than me. There are only one Elemental Shaman that's better than me. Run Primal Elementalist. Primal Elementalist can go really well with your tier 20, because your tier 20 lowers your fire elemental cooldown a lot. Like normally it would be a 4 to 5 minute cooldown. With the tier 20 set, it goes down to like a minute 30, 2 minutes if you're really unlucky. And also, if you don't feel like casting Elemental Blast on cooldown, because if you're going to run Elemental Blast, you have to cast it on cooldown, otherwise it won't work the way you want it to. You need to have as much stat upkeep as possible, even though they nerfed it this patch. But if you don't feel like casting Elemental Blast, Primal Elementalist is your next best choice, and it's not too far behind. I find that the playstyle of Primal Elementalist is a lot more dull and boring, because sometimes I have those moments where it's like, I want to cast Elemental Blast, but I can't because I'm not spec'd into it, so I'm just sitting there spamming lightning bolts that hit for, what, 150, 170k? So I just get bored. So I personally only run Elemental Blast. And as of now, I don't know of any specific time you would actually use Elemental Fusion. I would imagine there are some situations where you could if there's a lot of multi-dying, but I don't run it on DI. I still run Elemental Blast, and that's what most other Shamans I've seen run. So, I just run Elemental Blast. That's all I can say. For single target. Storm Elemental. They buffed the tier 20 effect on Storm Elementals, so this is a possible option. I personally don't run it because, again, I feel like it dulls down the playstyle, because then you get one less charge of Lava Burst from Echo of the Elements. It's completely up to you. The tier 75 and tier 90 talent brackets between Blast and Primal Elementalist and Storm Ellie and Echo, they're honestly playstyle preferences. They're all very close to each other in terms of power, but I personally find that Blast and Echo are more enjoyable for me, just because I have more stuff to press in my rotation and I'm less cooldown dependent. Sorry, I'm congested. And then, in the level 100 bracket, I only run Ascendance for single target, although if your stats are set up for it and you know the perfect way to run Ice Fury, I've heard that it's viable, although I cannot confirm that because I've never run Ice Fury. I only run Ascendance for single target. Ascendance is very simple. It's a cooldown on a 3-minute cooldown. Redundant as hell. It gives you extra damage on your Lava Burst depending on your crit. So I have 29% crit, so if I pop Ascendance, I would do 29% more Lava Burst damage. And it also gets rid of the cooldown on Lava Burst, so you spam those out until you capped out at Maelstrom and then Earth Shock. Alright, so that's all for the single target talents. Now let's move on to AoE talents. For tier 15, you are still going to run Totem Mastery, again for the Chain Lightning Overload, and the Haste, and the Maelstrom. Tier 30, you're still going to want to run Gust of Wind, unless of course your team needs an AoE movement buff, like Wind Rush Charm. Tier 45, you're still choosing between Lightning Surge and Earth Grab, depending on the situation. Level 60 is when things start to change. No matter what legendaries you're running, you're going Ancestral Swiftness if you're running an AoE spec. Because the extra... Wait, actually, no, I'm screwing myself up. You actually still want to run Aftershock, because they buffed Earthquake. I forgot, I'm sorry. They buffed Earthquake in 7.3. So now Earthquake is like super viable to just spam out, and Aftershock refunds the Maelstrom that you spend, and Earthquake costs Maelstrom. So anything that could give you more Earthquakes, you definitely want to go for it. So Aftershock is actually still the best in AoE, at least from what I found. In the level 75 tier, I still run Blast for AoE, just for the extra stats. I generally don't use it on cooldown at this point. I'm normally spamming out Chain Lightnings and Earthquakes, but depending on how many targets there are, it may be worth using Elemental Blast. If there are only 2 targets, then you still want to use Elemental Blast and simply replace Lightning Bolt with Chain Lightning. If it's 3 targets, then honestly I'm not sure. I feel like at that point it's kind of on you to judge. Like, okay, you just kind of have to test it out at that point, I feel like. But if you're hitting 4 targets, then I wouldn't even bother with Elemental Blast. You just don't even cast it. You stay spec'd into it because it's still better, but you don't even cast it because it's just a waste of a global compared to a Chain Lightning to spam out 3 Earthquakes. In the level 90 tier, we are going to choose the only talent I didn't go over in the single target spec, which is Liquid Magma Totem. You want to choose Liquid Magma for AoE just because it's a totem you put on the ground and it does a live AoE. If you check my logs, you'll find that on the AoE boss fights, you'll see that a lot of my damage came from Liquid Magma, probably like 15%. So yeah, you definitely want to run Liquid Magma, and at least for Desolate Host, because we had just killed Mythic Desolate Host. I feel like you want to swap off between using Stormkeeper and Liquid Magma, at least if you're in Corporeal Realm. Although, if you're an Elemental Shaman, most Shamans are placed in Spirit, I'm pretty sure because it's less dangerous, because you have an extra healer in there, and you're not getting targeted with spears and possibly getting one-shot. Because Shamans are very, very squishy. We only have 1 defensive, and it's not all that great, considering what the cooldown is. But anyway, at least in Corporeal Realm, if that's where you are, I recommend that you use Stormkeeper for one set of ads, and then Liquid Magma for the next. Or, use Stormkeeper for the first set of ads until they get Bone Armor taken off, and then Liquid Magma them to finish them off. You could switch it around too. You can Liquid Magma first and then Stormkeeper. It doesn't matter, but I recommend that you you rotate your AoE cooldowns just to get the maximum effect out of it. Because otherwise, if you put Liquid Magma down and then Stormkeeper, then your Chain Lightning will just melt the ads into Bone Armor, and then most of Liquid Magma is just going into a shield, and then it's wasted. So again, for AoE, run Liquid Magma, and I recommend swapping it off with Stormkeeper because they're on the same cooldown. And then for AoE, you probably already knew this, but you want to run Lightning Rod, because you're going to be spamming Chain Lightning in AoE, and Lightning Rod will deal extra damage on your Chain Lightnings, 40% extra damage, and it's a 30% chance to give someone Lightning Rod. So it's just more damage on Chain Lightning, which is what you're spamming, so it's just so much more useful. So now I am going to go over some of the builds I used for raiding. You can also check my logs on this to figure it out, but this one, even though it says Mythic plus AoE, this is the same for Mistress, Harjatan, and Desolate Host in Corporeal Realm, but only for Heroic. If you're in Mythic, you may have to swap out, for instance, the Chain Lightning Legendary with Pride as. That's what I had to do for Desolate Host, because in Mythic the mechanics are going to hit you much harder. The mechanics are going to be changed a little bit, so it's always nice to have that extra shield just to help you out. But this Mythic plus AoE spec, let me compare it to the Casino build. So first we are running the Gloves and Boots. This is the best build for single target or high movement fights. And I was running Charm of the Rising Tide and Whispers in the Dark. And yes, Whispers in the Dark is still good enough to be at such a low eye level, but still replace this 940 Terror that I have in my inventory. But anyway, here are the two Trinkets, here are the two Legendaries. Let's go to Mythic plus AoE. Now I switch my Legendaries to Cephasus and Chain Lightning, the Chain Lightning wrist. The reason I switched to these is because the wrists simply increase your Chain Lightning damage for each subsequent target it hits, so it's just automatically better for AoE. And the reason I run Cephasus is because in Mythic Plus, pretty much every ad pack can get stunned, and Earthquake has a stun built right into it, and that procs Cephasus. So if you're running an AoE build right here, which I have open right here, and you're running this Mythic Plus AoE spec, or legendary gear build, every time you Earthquake, you have a chance to stun someone, and when that procs, it will proc Cephasus, and you will get 25% haste and 70% movement speed, plus the flat 10% movement speed and 2% haste. So Cephasus is so good when you're running an AoE build, and the ads can get stunned by your Earthquake. Now you might be wondering, why did I mention Cephasus on Harjatan? The ads can't get stunned on Harjatan. That's true, but the Wave Menders are such high priority, and interrupts proc Cephasus as well. Something that I didn't do before, and it made my damage less than optimal. I was running Eye of the Twisting Nether, I believe it was called. Eye of the Twisting Nether. It's the legendary that increases your damage based on like the damage you're doing with different elements. I was running that instead of Cephasus, because I was like, well, the ads can't get stunned, so why would I run Cephasus? But on Harjatan, the Wave Menders are so important to interrupt that I run Cephasus, and I try and interrupt as quick as I can, proc a Cephasus, and then continue spamming out Chain Lightning and just melting the ads to the ground. So on Harjatan, this is where Cephasus is like super good. Because the ads can't get stunned, you're not just mindlessly doing extra damage by spamming Earthquake. You're also interrupting the ads, which is something I never did before. Because I thought it was a waste of my time. I had to switch targets, I had to interrupt my Chain Lightning cast and interrupt an ad. For what? I didn't get a Sepsis proc, it didn't matter. But when I saw a Shaman that was better than me on my server, in another guild that's 7 out of 9 Mythic, I believe, I saw the Shaman running Sepsis, and I was like, why would the Shaman be running Sepsis on Harshatan? So then I tried it out. I ended up doing less damage than that Shaman, but I did like 300,000 more DPS than I did before, and that was also top interrupts. So I basically prevented as much damage as I possibly could from the Wave Menders, because their watery splash cast, it hits harder than you think, especially if you have a lot of drench stacks. Sorry if I'm rambling at this point, my throat's dry. But now I actually interrupt the ads, so I make the raid take a little bit less damage, but I also proc Sepsis and make myself do even more damage so it can melt the ads quicker anyway. So it's a win-win on Harshatan for Sepsis. And for Mistress, the ads could just get Earthquake stunned, and if you could also use Lightning Surge Charm if you want. I personally don't. Honestly, I don't even use Lightning Surge or Earth Grab anymore. I don't even see the point. Sometimes I use it just to hold the ads in place, specifically on Mythic, and Mythic Mistress is gonna suck, by the way. And like I said, in the Corporeal realm on Desolate Host, you can run Sepsis because the ads can just get stunned. Even in Spirit, you could technically run Sepsis because you can interrupt the Priestesses. Just make sure you don't interrupt a Shattering Scream that someone on Spirit side is bringing over to the Corporeal ads to break the bone Shield. So that is the Mythic Plus AoE build. That also applies to Harshatan, Mistress, and definitely Corporeal Desolate Host, possibly Spirit. And now let's go over to Tomb of Sargeras AoE. This is the exact same build as the Mythic Plus AoE, except I am running Eye of the Twisting Nether. Now, I know the titles are misleading, considering the fact that I never use this build. Unless there's a fight with a live AoE that, where the ads can't get interrupted or stunned. I think this is why I ran on Harshatan. This is why I ran on Harshatan before I realized I could just interrupt the ads and proc Sepsis. I honestly can't think of a way this would actually be useful. I still have this as an armor set just in case, but I honestly am not sure when this would be useful. Elemental single target healing. This build is the weirdest one I've ever made, but it works. It works in a sense. This is the build that I ran for Mythic Sisters, because I found myself getting one-shot by the glaives multiple times. I'm not sure if any of you have seen my live stream, but at one point I got hit by a glaive, died, I reincarned, I got hit by another glaive, used a defensive, barely lived, and then got hit by another glaive and died. And let me remind you, all of these glaives were consecutively targeted on me. There was nothing I could do, I was just there. But I was not running any defensive legendary, so I would just die if I didn't have a cooldown for it. So for Mythic Sisters, I had to run Pridaz and the Roots of Shallow Dristle. The Pridaz necklace, it gives you a shield for 25% of your maximum health, so that's helpful to reduce some damage. And the Roots of Shallow Dristle, it heals you for 3% of your max health every second, as long as you're standing still. And as an Elemental Shaman, we don't have any abilities that we can cast while moving, except for like Flame Shock, Instant Chain Lightning, Lightning Bolt, and Earth Shock. And Frost Shock technically, but I think that only really applies if you're actually running Ice Fury. So standing still isn't really a thing for Ele Shamans. We are always standing still, unless we're trying to avoid Glaive Storm or something. So I would recommend running this build on Mythic Sisters, especially if you keep on dying to simple mechanics over and over, because you're better off living and doing some damage than dying and doing none. And I proved that this build works because I ended up being the top Elemental Shaman on the server for Mythic Sisters running this build. So, it works. And because it's single target, I'm still running Charm of the Rising Tide and Whispers, and something I forgot to go over. Sorry, I'm all over the place. For the AoE build, I run a Tome of Unraveling Sanity and a Venerable Triad Statuette. And just put this in simpler terms, the Tome of Unraveling Sanity is the intellect on use trinket that drops from Kill Jaden. And the whatever this trinket's called, it came from a relinquished token, and it's intellect statistic crit. Previously I was running, let me see if I can find it, if I didn't delete it already. I think before I was actually running Whispers with this as well, but now I don't have to because I have this. It's a tad bit better, not by much, but it's a little bit better. And then, we have already gone over the casino build. And just so all of you know, Elemental Shaman single target damage is definitely weaker than most classes. And you're definitely going to be down on the charts if you're not running this build. So in single target, Shaman is definitely legendary dependent when it comes to doing damage. And it's also proc dependent, because this spec is only super good if you're proccing like 3 Earth Shocks in a row, and one of those is proccing Ascendants. So Elemental Shaman with the gamble build is definitely a gamble, hence the name, but it's still the best, because when you think about it, Ellie is pretty RNG based anyway. So if your single target numbers are low, that's okay, because Elemental Shaman single target damage is not there compared to many other classes. I make it work somehow, and if you want, you can look at my logs and try and figure out what I'm doing, because honestly for me it's all instinctive. And remember, you can still watch our kill videos, and you can watch my live stream live Saturdays and Sundays, about 7:30 to 11 o'clock p.m. Central U.S. time, so CDT currently. That would be 5:30 to 9 o'clock Pacific, and 8:30 to midnight Eastern. So remember, you can always watch my stream, twitch.tv/Krelerolan. You can't see that on my promotional stuff. You can see my YouTube channel. You can look at my character's armory on the World of Warcraft website, Damson-Wormrest Accord. You can look up our guild, Abandoned, again on Wormrest Accord. Yeah, all of this information is available to all of you. You can look up my logs, look up my armory, look up all the information you want. This is just referring you to those areas to look up, and this is giving you a broad overview of your talent choices and your legendary builds. I suppose I can also give you a dry run of my single target rotation. Let me just spec into my single target. This only applies for the gamble build, and something special you need to know about the gamble build. If you are running the gamble build, you should be earth shocking at about 80 Maelstrom, give or take like 10. Even I screw this up sometimes, but I still make it work. And the reason for this is because if your boots proc an Earthshock refund, combine that with Aftershock, it will actually generate Maelstrom. So by Earthshocking at 80 instead of like 110, 120, you're not going to overload on Maelstrom nearly as quickly unless you're proccing multiple Earthshocks on top of each other, which I've done before, and love those forever if you proc all those Earthshocks. So yeah, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of what the single target rotation is. I honestly feel like it's simple. So first, obviously you want to have Totem Mastery down. And then you'll want to start off by precasting an Ellie Blast, and then Fire Elemental, Flame Shock, double lava burst so that you can get your elemental focus stacks, ascendant, and spam out those lava bursts. And when you're in ascendance, even with the gamble build, you do earth shock at max maelstrom. And look, I just procced an ascendance right there. The timing of my ascendance, the duration just went up. But notice how in ascendance, even with the gamble build, I'm earth shocking at max maelstrom, because that's the way you do it. Notice how I'm also casting Ellie Blast on cooldown, as best I can at least. It gets difficult for me sometimes, just because I'm not always paying attention to it. And then right here, notice how I earth shocked at about 80 maelstrom, and then I refunded maelstrom. And because I'm running aftershock, that means I actually generated maelstrom. I went up to like 110, and I was able to do another earth shock. If you're proccing earth shocks, you're spamming them. And right here, I just overflowed on maelstrom a little bit, but that's okay. You just keep on going. Make sure you keep flame shock up, earth shock, lava burst. Take advantage of those procs. Cast Ellie Blast on cooldown as best you can. Only lightning bolt if you have nothing else to do, or if you're worried about capping on maelstrom. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you right now. So yeah, like I said, go to my logs, look up Damn Sun on Wormrust Accord. I'll probably put a link in the description. Look up my armory, look up our guild, look up my, oh, well, you're on my YouTube channel, but look at my old videos here of our mythic kill videos, even our heroic ones if that's where your progression is at, or where you want to be playing Shaman. I only have videos for Maiden, Avatar, and Kill Jaden, but I wasn't recording before that. But now this is like my job in the guild, to be the media person. So yeah, just look up all that info, it's all available. I'll see you guys in the next video. I am streaming tonight, although today is Saturday morning. I don't know when this video is getting uploaded. Maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's never, next week, who knows. But remember, stream, twitch.tv/Krelerolan, 7:30 to 11 on Saturdays and Sundays in Central Time. You can watch us do our heroic farm if we haven't already done it on Tuesday. Otherwise, you're watching us do our mythic farm and our mythic progression. So, guys, I'll see you later. I hope you enjoyed this guide. Hope it was helpful. I'm gonna devour some water, and I'll see all of you next time. Peace.